You already did it this morning. Maybe it was the first cup of coffee. Maybe it was the cigarette on the way to work. Maybe it was something stronger, something you tell yourself you could quit if you really wanted to. Either way, before the day was barely an hour old, you reached for something to alter the way your brain feels. And here's the part no one tells you. That impulse is not a modern weakness. It is not a flaw in your character or a failure of willpower. It is one of the oldest things about you. Your ancestors were probably high most of the time, not in the way a movie might picture it, not stumbling through a forest, laughing at nothing. The picture is far more deliberate than that, far more woven into the fabric of daily life. Because for most of human history, altering your consciousness was not an escape from life. It was a central part of it. The question is why? And the answer reaches back much further than you might expect. Start with the biology. Your brain contains a system called the endocannabinoid system. It is named after cannabis because cannabis was the first plant discovered to interact with it. But the system itself is ancient. It predates cannabis by hundreds of millions of years. Neurobiologist John Huffman spent decades mapping this system, and what he found is striking. Your brain does not simply tolerate the compounds found in psychoactive plants. In many cases, it has specific receptor sites shaped almost perfectly to receive them, as if your neurons were waiting for these molecules long before the first human ever walked upright. That is not an accident. It is a relationship. One that began before you were human. The anthropologist Ronald Siegel spent years studying animal behavior across hundreds of species, and what he documented overturned a comfortable assumption. Humans are not the only creatures that seek out mind-altering substances. Elephants travel miles to find fermented fruit. Reindeer in Siberia seek out the same psychedelic mushrooms their human neighbors consume. Cats are famously incapacitated by nepentolactone, the compound in catnip. Dolphins have been observed passing puffer fish between themselves, apparently to experience the mild narcotic effect of the neurotoxin. Siegel called this tendency the fourth drive. Not hunger, not sex, not fear. The drive to alter consciousness appears in virtually every animal species ever studied. It seems to be baked into the experience of having a nervous system, which means when your ancestor, 300,000 years ago, found a bush covered in fermented berries and ate them until the world softened at the edges, they were not doing something unusual. They were doing something almost universal. But humans took it somewhere no other animal did. Humans got intentional about it. The archaeological record is staggering once you know how to read it. Traces of cannabis resin have been found in ritual burial sites dating back nearly 5,000 years in the Pamir Mountains of Central Asia. Opium poppies were cultivated in the Mediterranean as far back as 3500 BCE. Coca leaves have been found in Peruvian burial sites dating to 3,000 years before the Common Era. In the Atacama Desert, archaeologists discovered leather pouches belonging to ancient shamans containing the tools needed to prepare multiple psychoactive compounds at once, blends sophisticated enough to suggest serious chemical knowledge. In Göbekli Tepe, possibly the oldest temple complex ever found, researchers have uncovered evidence that massive quantities of fermented grain were produced on site, not for food, but almost certainly for ritual intoxication. The temple may have been built around the experience of collective altered states. Let that sit for a moment. One of humanity's first monumental structures may have been constructed as a place to get high together. Why? What could possibly make that worth the labor of moving 100-ton stones? The answer requires you to think about what consciousness alteration actually does to the brain. Neuroscientist Robin Carhart-Harris at Imperial College London has spent years studying the neural effects of psychedelic compounds, and his research points to something profound.